"Get your hands off that car, boy. You don't belong in this neighborhood." The words hit like a gunshot. The sound of engines, radios, and fear folded into one. 3 police cruisers boxed in a white BMW on a quiet suburban street, blue lights painting the driveways in flashes of judgment. The man they cornered, tall, calm, black, in a navy suit and red tie, did not move. His name was Darius Cole. But to them, he was just another suspect. Before we go further, I want you to ask yourself something. What would you do if the people who swore to protect you treated you like a criminal on your own property? Stay with this story, because in the next few minutes, every assumption about power, race, and respect is about to turn inside out. Now back to that moment. Officer Harris, white, mid-50s, hand on his holster, took a step closer. "Step away from the vehicle." No answer. He tried again, louder. I said, "Hands on the hood." Still nothing. Darius stood like a monument, breathing once, eyes level. The afternoon sun flared off the badge on Harris's chest, but it was the calm in Darius's eyes that made everyone tense. From the sidewalk, neighbors filmed with their phones. A woman whispered, "He looks like he owns that car." Her husband replied, "Yeah, but not around here." Somewhere down the block, a child's voice shouted, "Daddy, what's happening?" Darius slowly set his briefcase on the ground. "Sir, I asked for identification," Harris barked. Darius spoke for the first time, voice low and precise. "You did not ask. You accused." Officer Blake, younger, anxious, stepped forward with a taser drawn. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." The air thickened. The only sound was the hum of engines and one camera lens zooming in. "License and registration," Harris snapped again. Darius looked him straight in the eye. "Which one do you want first, the registration to my car or the deed to this house?" A ripple moved through the small crowd. Even Blake hesitated. But Harris pressed on, red-faced. "Do not get smart with me." Darius tilted his head, almost curious. "Is that what you call it? Smart?" Then, without raising his voice, he reached into his jacket pocket. Officers tensed. Hands moved toward triggers. He pulled out a black leather wallet, unfolded it, and held it up to the light. The gold seal caught the sun, clear and cold. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The street fell silent. Harris blinked, speechless. Darius met his gaze, voice steady as steel. "You boys are done." The sirens faded, but the silence that followed was heavier. It pressed down on every porch, every curtain pulled back just enough for someone to peek through. The neighborhood was all symmetry and fences, manicured lawns cut to regulation height, and 2-story houses with flags that had not been taken down since Memorial Day. Yet beneath all that perfection ran a quiet, familiar current of fear. A white woman across the street clutched her phone and whispered to the emergency line, "There is a suspicious black man outside number 27. He looks dangerous." Her voice trembled, but not from fear of harm, from the thrill of being heard. She was not the only one. Within minutes, more calls poured into dispatch, all describing the same man, the same car, the same tone of certainty. Darius Cole stood by the curb, hands still lowered, expression still calm. The white BMW behind him gleamed in the sun like a mirror reflecting every judgment back at them. He had lived in this house for 6 years. His neighbors waved at him on weekends, accepted his Christmas cards, even borrowed his lawn tools. But now, through their windows, he was someone else entirely. Officer Harris's voice echoed through the cul-de-sac. "Step away from the vehicle, sir. You are on private property." Darius's reply came steady, controlled. "It is mine." The officer laughed once, sharp and dismissive. "We will see about that." From the corner house, a man in a golf shirt muttered to his wife, "Probably a repo job. Those people always drive fancy cars they cannot afford." She shushed him, but her eyes never left Darius. Another neighbor recorded quietly, narrating like a spectator at a game. "This is wild. He is just standing there, not even talking back." 2 children on bicycles stopped at the end of the street. One of them whispered, "Why are they yelling at him?" The other said softly, "Because he is black." Their mother pulled them inside before anyone could hear. The sun climbed higher, heat shimmered off the hood of the car, and the scene stretched longer than it should have. Every second Darius remained silent. The officers grew louder. Harris barked into his radio. "Possible trespasser, uncooperative, requesting verification." The response crackled back, "Copy that. Proceed with caution." Darius adjusted his tie, a slow, deliberate motion that looked like defiance to those who needed an excuse. One of the younger officers, Blake, whispered, "Maybe we should wait for ID confirmation." Harris waved him off. "We do not wait when property is at risk." Behind them, the crowd of onlookers thickened. Smartphones rose like a forest of small, glowing eyes. A teenager live-streamed on social media. The caption read, "Black man gets confronted by cops outside his own house. Stay tuned." The view count began to climb in real time. Darius did not turn around. He could feel the weight of every lens, every whisper, every doubt pressing against his back. His neighborhood, the one he had chosen for peace, for quiet, for safety, was now a stage, and he was the unwilling actor. Harris approached again. "What are you doing here?" "Waiting for you to realize how wrong you are," Darius said. "Watch your tone." "I am." The words landed like pebbles in still water, ripples spreading through the watching crowd. A man near the stop sign called out, "If he belongs here, he should just prove it." Another shouted, "Why not cooperate?" Cooperate. That word had followed Darius his entire career. Cooperate when they searched him at airports. Cooperate when they questioned his credentials at security gates. Cooperate when they pulled him over outside federal buildings he supervised. It always meant the same thing. Make yourself smaller so they feel bigger. The neighbor 2 doors down, Mrs. Lang, opened her door and gasped. She knew him. Darius had helped her move her furniture last spring. She called out, "Officers, that man lives here." Her voice cracked under the tension. Harris did not turn. "Ma'am, please stay back. We will handle this." Darius glanced toward her, then back to Harris. "You are handling it very well," he said quietly. A ripple of uneasy laughter came from somewhere in the crowd. The moment felt both absurd and dangerous, like a glass about to shatter. Blake's hand trembled on his taser. Carla Ruiz, the youngest officer, bit her lip, looking between them. She had seen his license plate flash green on the system earlier. Federal vehicle. Government issue. But the sergeant's orders were clear. Do not question command. A dog barked from behind a fence. The sound snapped through the tension like static. Darius looked down the street. A delivery truck had stopped at the end of the block. Even the driver was filming. Every witness was ready, but no one was willing. Then, something small but irreversible happened. The wind caught the edge of Darius's jacket, revealing the dark leather case clipped inside. Blake saw it and froze. "He has something on him," he shouted. Harris spun around, hand on weapon, shouting, "Drop it!" But Darius did not move. He stood exactly where he was, the picture of restraint. His voice, when it came, was calm enough to chill the air. "Officer, if you pull that trigger, you will spend the rest of your career explaining to Washington why you shot one of their own." The sentence hung there, heavy and electric. No one moved. The lawn sprinklers switched on down the street, hissing softly like applause. And for the first time, doubt crept into Harris's face. Something about this man, his words, his composure did not fit the picture he had built. But pride is louder than reason, and Harris had never learned to listen. The cameras kept rolling. The neighborhood watched. The story had just begun. His name was Darius Cole, 42 years old. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Affairs Division. A man whose job was to investigate the very people who claimed to protect the law. But none of that mattered in that moment. To the officers surrounding him, he was not Agent Cole. He was just another black man standing too, still in a white neighborhood. The afternoon sun burned down, turning the quiet suburban street into a stage of suspicion. The blue lights reflected off the chrome rims of his car, painting ripples of red and white across his front porch. The house behind him, white columns, blue shutters, an American flag on the porch looked like something from a postcard. But the irony cut deep. That flag, waving proudly above his head, had never felt so far away. Darius had chosen this neighborhood for its silence. After 20 years in the field, he wanted peace, no more stings, no more undercover nights spent pretending to be someone else. He had bought this house in full, cash payment. The same week he closed an internal corruption case that had taken 3 years to build. It was supposed to be his place of rest. Now it was a crime scene of prejudice. He stood still as Officer Harris barked orders into his radio. "Suspect remains uncooperative, may be armed." That word suspect landed heavier than a weapon. Darius had spent decades chasing suspects. Now he was one. Carla Ruiz, the youngest of the officers, stood near the police cruiser. Her brow furrowed as she scrolled through the database screen on the dashboard. She whispered almost to herself, "Plate number 2-79, federal clearance." Her eyes widened slightly. But before she could speak, Harris snapped, "Eyes up, rookie. You follow my lead." She nodded quickly, biting her lip. Blake shifted beside him. "You hearing this, Sarge? Dispatch says the registration's clean." "Then maybe it is stolen from someone important," Harris snapped back. The logic twisted itself into a knot only bias could tighten. Darius inhaled slowly, remembering something his mentor had told him years ago during training. In a room full of shouting men, silence is the sharpest weapon. He used that silence now. Every second he refused to flinch was a mirror they could not bear to face. He looked past the officers, past the blinking cameras, and caught sight of a young boy standing near a mailbox no older than 12. The boy's eyes were wide, scared. He held his mother's hand. Darius felt a flicker of memory ignite, uninvited. Flashback Baltimore, 1998. He was 16, wearing a white hoodie, running home from basketball practice. A patrol car pulled up beside him. 2 officers jumped out, shouting that he fit a description. They made him lie face down on the sidewalk while his father watched helplessly from their front porch. The words still echoed, "Stay down until we say you are good enough to stand." That day had taught him the shape of power and the price of dignity. It was the reason he joined the Bureau, not to be above the system, but to hold it accountable. The flash of memory faded. The boy near the mailbox stared back at him, mirroring the same fear Darius once knew. He straightened his posture and met the child's gaze as if to say, "You will not inherit this silence." Officer Harris circled him like a vulture. "What kind of work you do, huh? You think you are untouchable in that suit?" Darius turned slightly, voice calm and deliberate. "I work for the people who write your rules." The answer sliced clean through the noise. Blake blinked. Ruiz froze. Harris barked a laugh, short and mean. "Yeah? You got jokes now." Darius did not smile. He kept his eyes steady, tone low. "No jokes, just truth." Ruiz's radio crackled again. A dispatcher's voice came through. "Be advised. Vehicle registered under government fleet. Clearance level red. Verify occupant identity before escalation." She opened her mouth. "Sergeant," Harris cut her off. "Do not listen to that. Probably a glitch. We have seen plenty of fake tags." Darius raised one eyebrow, just enough to register defiance. "Fake tags on a federal car? That is a new one." Harris's face turned crimson. "Enough. You want to play smart? We can do this the hard way." The tension was no longer air. It was metal. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. Ruiz shifted uneasily. Blake's eyes darted from Darius to his superior, unsure which reality to believe. The crowd murmured, their whispers carried by heat and disbelief. Darius broke the silence with the precision of a scalpel. "You see what happens when you mistake authority for ownership? You start protecting property instead of people." No one answered. Even Harris's radio was quiet now. The neighborhood was listening. Then, a sound click. A single camera phone zoomed closer. The teenager from earlier whispered to his friend, "He does not even look scared." And he was not. Fear had left Darius a long time ago. What remained was clarity. He thought of the years he had spent building cases against corrupt officers, men who lied on reports, who abused power because they could. He had interviewed victims who looked just like him, who spoke softly, and carried the same exhaustion. Every file, every late-night report, had led to this intersection of power and prejudice, this driveway where truth stood against arrogance. Officer Harris cleared his throat. "Final warning, sir. Step away from the vehicle." Darius did not move. His voice dropped just enough for the microphones to catch. "Do it. Show the world how justice looks when the badge forgets its promise." The street was silent again, except for the sound of distant sirens drawing closer. The backup Harris had called was on its way. The walls of this neighborhood were about to witness more than they ever expected. Darius Cole, father, veteran, federal agent, stood on his own property, facing the barrel of ignorance that had learned nothing from history. And he knew, with cold certainty, that this was not an accident. This was America, still trying to recognize its own reflection. The sound of a command snapped through the air like a breaking branch. "Hands on the hood, now!" Officer Harris had stepped closer, boots grinding against the gravel of Darius's driveway. The weight of his authority filled the space like smoke. Behind him, the 2 younger officers watched, waiting for the signal that would let them act. Darius did not move. His stillness was not defiance, it was control. He had spent years training men like Harris to handle escalation with restraint. The irony cut deep. Now he was on the wrong end of that lesson. Harris barked again. "You are refusing a lawful order." Darius's voice came low, even. "Lawful requires lawful cause. You have none." The sergeant's jaw tightened. "We will see about that." He gestured toward Officer Blake. "Search him." Blake hesitated. He could feel the eyes of the neighborhood burning into his back, a dozen phones raised, recording every move. He was young enough to know the world was watching, but too afraid of his superior to step back. He approached slowly. "Sir, just keep your hands visible." Darius lifted his palms slightly, his eyes calm but unyielding. "They have been visible this entire time." The boy from the mailbox whispered to his mother, "Why are they doing this?" She did not answer. She only pulled him behind her, as if shielding him from the lesson unfolding before their eyes. Blake reached forward to pat Darius down, his gloved hand trembling. Harris's voice rose again, too loud for reason. "Move faster, Blake. We do not need a show." The heat pulsed between them. Sweat gathered at Blake's temple. As he leaned in, Darius turned his head slightly. "Be careful what you touch, officer. I do not need another report to file today." Blake froze. "What do you mean by that?" Darius looked directly at him. "I mean every action you take right now is being recorded by 4 body cameras, 6 phones, and 1 security feed that belongs to me." The words hit like a quiet explosion. Blake stepped back, uncertain. Harris rolled his eyes, waving him away. "Do not listen to that nonsense. He is bluffing." But Darius was not bluffing. Inside the house, 3 motion sensors had already triggered the internal surveillance system. Every word, every movement, was streaming directly to a secure bureau server. He had activated the system the moment he saw the first cruiser turn the corner. He spoke again, his tone flat and deliberate. "Protocol standby. Recording confirmed." The sentence was quiet enough that only the microphones on the officers' chests picked it up. It was not meant for them, it was meant for Washington. Harris frowned. "What did you just say?" Darius did not answer. Blake looked between them, unease growing like a storm cloud. "Sarge, maybe we should wait for verification," the dispatcher said. "I do not care what the dispatcher said," Harris snapped. "We have a trespasser on private property and an unverified vehicle. That is enough." The tension rippled outward, past the driveway, past the lawn, into the watching crowd. Neighbors who had once smiled at Darius now whispered theories about him. Some said he must have stolen the car. Others claimed he was impersonating a government agent. Each sentence added a brick to the wall, closing in around him. A woman in yoga pants muttered, "He should just do what they say." Her friend replied, "If he were innocent, he would." The simplicity of their judgment was sharper than any weapon. Darius finally spoke again, his tone colder than before. "You keep saying I am trespassing. Tell me, officer, what part of this address do you think I do not belong to?" Harris's reply came fast. "The part with property taxes, I imagine." That drew a few nervous laughs from the crowd. Darius's face did not change. He tilted his head slightly, studying the man in front of him. "You are sure about that?" The sergeant smirked. "I am sure about what I see." "Then look closer." The briefcase by Darius's feet gleamed in the Sunday. Harris's gaze flicked toward it, suspicion twisting his features. "What is in there?" "Documents," Darius said simply. "Open it." "No." "I do." The single word landed like a verdict. Harris's hand dropped to his taser. "You will open it now." Darius shook his head once. "Not without a warrant. You are on my property. The law you think you represent does not exist here without one." The sergeant's patience cracked. "Enough of this legal talk." He nodded toward Blake. "Grab the case." Blake looked uneasy. "Sir, I really do not think—" "Now." Blake stepped forward, reaching down. Before his fingers touched the handle, Darius's voice cut through the air. "If you open that, you are committing a federal offense." The crowd gasped. Harris barked a laugh. "You trying to scare me with legal talk, mister?" "No," Darius said quietly. "I am reminding you what accountability sounds like." Then, almost as if on cue, a low hum vibrated from the briefcase. Blake jumped back. A blue light blinked once on its side. Darius looked down at it, then back up. "That means the Bureau has your audio." For a moment, even Harris went still. Blake swallowed hard. Ruiz, still near the cruiser, stepped forward slightly. "Sergeant, maybe we should call this in." Harris glared at her. Not another word out of you. Darius's calm deepened, becoming something heavier, something immovable. You have had 4 chances to stop this. Each one was a door back to reason. You closed them all. Harris pointed the taser directly at his chest. Do not test me. Huh. Darius met his eyes. You already failed the test. The sound of another siren approached in the distance backup on the way. The crowd shifted, phones high, hearts pounding. The street felt like a courtroom waiting for its verdict. Darius took one slow breath. This is the moment, he said softly, almost to himself. This is where truth begins. The blue light on the briefcase blinked again, and somewhere, miles away in Washington, a red indicator appeared on a federal monitor. Live recording, Agent Darius Cole, incident, active. The trap was no longer his, it was theirs. The hum from the briefcase faded, but the sound it left behind was worse. Silence. The kind of silence that carried history. Darius Cole stood motionless, eyes steady, his body still as stone. The officers around him shifted, unsure. That blue light had changed something in the air. What had been arrogance was now unease. What had been control was now confusion. Harris barked another order, but the edge in his voice had dulled. You think that toy scares me? Darius's reply was almost gentle. You are not scared of me, Sergeant. You are scared of what happens when people start watching. The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, he sounds like he knows the law. Another voice answered, maybe he is the law. Harris turned away, shouting at the younger officers. Get him restrained before he tries anything. But no one moved. The tension had shifted. Authority was crumbling in slow motion. Darius's gaze drifted upward, toward the flag swaying above his porch. The fabric snapped in the wind, white, red, and blue, and for a brief second it blurred into something else. Memory. He remembered another flag, another day. Baltimore, 2001. He was 20 years old, freshly accepted into the Federal Bureau of Investigation's training academy. His father had driven him there in silence, both proud and afraid. That night, before his first day, Darius stopped at a small diner near the station. He still wore his academy sweatshirt, the words Federal Bureau of Investigation trainee printed in bold white letters. He sat at the counter, ordered coffee, and waited. The waitress looked at the shirt, then at his face. You can take that off, she said flatly. He frowned. Excuse me? You can take it off. No one is going to believe that anyway. The room went quiet. A man in a booth laughed under his breath. Darius swallowed hard, picked up his cup, and said nothing. He had promised his father he would never make a scene. When he walked outside, 2 officers stood beside his old sedan. Car trouble? One asked, though his tone made it clear it was not a question. No, Darius answered. Then what are you doing here? Having coffee. The second officer looked at the first. Out here, dressed like that? In this neighborhood? They checked his ID 3 times, asked the same questions in new orders, then told him to be careful where you park that thing. He drove off with a shaking hand on the wheel, the taste of cold coffee still on his tongue. That was 24 years ago. He had thought that by now, America would have learned. He had thought he had earned the right to stop proving himself. The flag on his porch snapped again, pulling him back to the present. Harris was pacing now, his frustration mounting. You think some badge makes you better than me? Darius replied, No, I think it should have made you better than this. The words hit their mark. Harris turned red, pointing his taser again. Last warning. You are out of warnings, Darius said. The woman who had called 911 earlier whispered, He is too calm. Something is wrong. Her husband answered, He is bluffing. Cops like Harris do this every day. But even he did not sound convinced. Officer Ruiz stepped forward, her voice small but steady. Sergeant, maybe we should step back and confirm identity. Dispatch mentioned a federal... Quiet, Harris snapped. You speak when I tell you to speak. Ruiz swallowed hard, eyes darting toward Darius. He nodded once, slow, almost imperceptible. The gesture said everything. You are seeing it now. The line they told you did not exist. Blake whispered, This is going too far. Harris ignored him. Put your hands on the hood. Darius tilted his head, as if studying the man's rage. You keep repeating that line, but you do not understand it. The hood you are pointing at belongs to me. The crowd gasped softly. Harris raised the taser higher. You are testing me. No, Darius said. You are testing yourself. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. Then came the smallest sound metal scraping concrete. Blake had stepped back, lowering his own weapon. "I am not doing this," he muttered. "Not again." Harris turned. "What do you mean again?" Blake's jaw tightened. 2 years ago, South Seattle. Same situation. Guy was innocent. You said it was procedure. "Enough," Harris barked. "You are dismissed." Blake did not move. He just looked at Darius and said quietly, "I am sorry, sir." That apology cracked something deeper than any insult. For the first time, Harris looked uncertain. His authority wavered. Darius did not speak. He just adjusted his jacket, the briefcase still glowing faintly at his feet. Ruiz whispered, "Sergeant, please, you are on camera. Everyone is filming." Harris's reply came through clenched teeth. "Then let them film. Let them see who runs this street." Darius sighed once, slow and heavy. "Yes," he said. "Let them see." He turned slightly toward the crowd, his voice calm but carrying enough weight to reach every ear. "You all want to know what power looks like? It is not in the gun or the badge or the voice that shouts the loudest. Power is knowing the law when they hope you do not." Someone clapped, just once, sharp and clear. No one knew who it was, but it echoed down the block like a signal. Harris's eyes darted around, realizing the story was slipping away from him. The control, the dominance, the easy authority, it was gone. Darius took a slow breath, the kind that felt like reclaiming air stolen long ago. "This is not my first time standing in the wrong place while being right," he said softly. "But it will be my last." He looked at Harris one last time. "Because this time the world is watching." The blue light on the briefcase pulsed again, steady as a heartbeat. And somewhere in Washington, the file labeled Cole, Incident. Live transmission began to grow, 1 megabyte at a time. The siren in the distance faded into the hum of air conditioners and whispers. The street had gone from curiosity to discomfort, from murmurs to murmured shame. The longer the standoff stretched, the less sure everyone became of what they were actually seeing. Officer Harris stood rigid, hands still near his taser, but his confidence had begun to sweat through his collar. The light from the briefcase blinked again, one pulse at a time, like a heartbeat that refused to die. Each blink made the air heavier. Darius Cole did not move. His eyes, calm and unwavering, scanned the 3 officers standing before him. He could tell who was beginning to question, who was trying not to. Officer Blake's grip had loosened on his weapon. His gaze flicked between Harris and Darius as if measuring the distance between pride and disaster. Finally, Blake spoke. "Sarge, maybe we should take a step back. This does not feel right." Harris turned on him. "It feels exactly right. You do not back down when a suspect refuses an order." "He is not resisting," Blake said carefully. "He has not moved." The older officer took a slow, menacing step forward, lowering his voice. "Do not forget who gives the orders here, son." Blake's jaw tightened. "Yes, sir." But the yes sounded like no. Ruiz, standing near the cruiser, glanced at the screen again. The plate number still flashed red for Federal Clearance Level 1. She knew what that meant. She had learned it in orientation. It indicated vehicles assigned to senior bureau agents or internal affairs operatives. Her pulse kicked up. She wanted to speak, but fear pressed her tongue down. Darius noticed her silence and gave her a look, not a command. Not even a plea, just a look that said, "I know you see it too." The crowd was restless now. Phones were still raised, but the commentary had changed. A man whispered, "If he is really FBI, they are in deep trouble." Another voice answered, "Then why is he letting them talk to him like that?" "Because he is smarter than they are," came a third. Harris's voice cracked through the noise. "Everyone back inside. This is official police business." No one moved. The cameras only zoomed closer. Darius spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Sergeant Harris, you have made 4 procedural violations since you arrived. Do you want me to list them?" "Excuse me?" Harris snapped. "Unlawful search attempt, excessive verbal intimidation, threat of force without probable cause, denial of verified identity confirmation." Darius paused. "That is 4. Would you like to add obstruction?" The words rolled out clean, precise, like bullets made of logic. Blake blinked. Ruiz exhaled quietly. The crowd shifted, suddenly aware that they were not watching a suspect, they were watching a man dismantle the law from the inside out. Harris's jaw clenched. "You think you can intimidate me with fancy language?" "I do not need to," Darius said. "You are doing it to yourself." The silence that followed was so thick even the breeze seemed to stop moving. A dog barked somewhere behind a fence. A baby cried from inside one of the houses. Life tried to continue, but the gravity of that driveway would not allow it. Then, another sound, the crackle of the police radio inside Ruiz's car. "All units be advised," said the dispatcher's voice, calm but firm. "Possible cross-agency conflict reported at location. Verify presence of federal personnel before engagement." The message landed like thunder. Blake's eyes darted toward the cruiser. Ruiz swallowed hard. Harris snapped, "Ignore that!" But it was too late. Everyone had heard it. The dispatcher's tone was unmistakable. The department already suspected they had made a mistake. Ruiz spoke up. "Sergeant, dispatch just said—" "I said ignore it," Harris shouted. "Do not let him manipulate you." Darius's expression did not change. "You are not being manipulated, Officer Ruiz. You are being given a chance to stand on the right side of this moment." Her voice trembled, but she answered. "Sir, I think we should confirm his identity. If we are wrong—" "Wrong," Harris cut in, laughing bitterly. "He has been lying since the start." "Or maybe you have," Darius said. The crowd reacted audibly. Some gasped. Others whispered. A man near the mailbox said softly, "He is turning it back on them." Harris raised his taser again, desperate to reclaim power. "That is it! Kneel down!" Darius did not move. "I said kneel. I am not the one who should." The words slid through the heat like a blade. Harris's face flushed red, his hand trembling. Blake stepped between them suddenly. "Sergeant, please! Look at him! Look at the badge in his jacket! He is not some random guy." "Step aside!" Harris barked. Blake did not move. "No, sir. Not until we verify." The crowd murmured louder now, voices of agreement, disbelief, and growing outrage. Someone shouted, "Check the ID already!" Ruiz opened her mouth. "Sergeant, the system says federal—" "Enough!" Harris shouted, his voice breaking. He spun toward the cruiser and slammed his fist on the hood. "You both are going to regret this insubordination." Darius watched quietly, every breath measured. "You are right about that, Sergeant. Someone will regret it." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, the faint sound of approaching engines broke through the tension. Another set of vehicles, heavy and official, rolling down the street. Their sirens were muted, but their presence undeniable. Blake turned toward the sound. "That is not local backup," he whispered. Darius adjusted his tie. "No, it is not." Harris spun back around. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Darius said calmly. "I just made a call." A new silence spread through the street, one of realization, not fear. The neighbors who had doubted began to step forward. The cameras caught everything, the red and blue reflection on Harris's face, the tremor in his voice, the man he had tried to humiliate standing tall and untouched. Ruiz lowered her radio. "Sergeant," she said softly, "they are here for him, not for us." Darius met Harris's eyes one last time. "You are about to learn the difference between authority and accountability." Then the first black SUV turned the corner. The Federal Bureau of Investigation emblem glinting under the Sunday. The neighborhood fell silent again, not the silence of fear this time, but the silence that comes before truth arrives. The first black SUV slowed to a stop at the edge of the cul-de-sac, its tinted windows reflecting the blue and red lights that still flashed across the white fences. The words, Federal Bureau of Investigation, shimmered faintly on the side of the vehicle, half hidden by sunlight, half claimed by shadow. Every camera phone in the neighborhood tilted in its direction. Every whisper went silent. Even the birds stopped calling. Darius Cole did not move. His face remained unreadable, a portrait of restraint carved from years of practice. Inside, his pulse was steady, but his mind was moving faster than any of them could see. The Bureau would not act until there was proof, he knew that. Evidence had to speak first. And then, from somewhere near the corner house, came the voice that would start the avalanche. "Going live now," said a young man. His phone camera pointed directly at the officers, his voice trembling between fear and adrenaline. "This is happening in real time. A black man is being surrounded by police on his own property. He says he works for the FBI." The feed went live within seconds. Comments began to pour in. "Where is this?" "Stay safe, brother." "Record everything." "No way he is FBI. Look at him." The boy's name was Tyler Briggs, 17 years old, a senior at Roosevelt High. He had seen too many videos that started like this and ended with sirens. This time, He had decided. The world would see it as it happened. Tyler zoomed in, catching the briefcase glowing faintly beside Darius's feet. "He has something in that case," he whispered to his friend behind the camera. "It is blinking like a tracker." Harris noticed the phone and shouted, "Turn that off!" His voice cracked across the block. "You cannot record an active police investigation." Tyler's mother, watching from her porch, yelled back, "He can record whatever he wants. This is America." The crowd murmured in agreement. Phones lifted higher. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted not because anyone had drawn a weapon, but because truth had found a lens. Harris turned back toward Darius, face red with rage. "You called them, did you not? You brought your people down here to make a scene." Darius's tone was flat. "I did not have to call them, Sergeant. You called them the moment you forgot your oath." The line cut through the tension like lightning. Tyler whispered to his phone. "He said that like he means it." Blake took a hesitant step back. "Sarge, we are live. There are thousands of viewers already." "I do not care," Harris barked. "They do not know the full story." "They are watching you write it," Darius said quietly. The sound of typing filled the live stream. Comments scrolled faster. "He is too calm. He has to be legit. They are going to regret this." Stay strong, brother. We are with you." Tyler's friend Malik whispered. "You think they are really FBI?" Tyler nodded toward the approaching SUV. "We are about to find out." The SUV doors opened slowly. 2 agents stepped out, suits crisp, badges visible, eyes sharp. They spoke briefly into earpieces before walking toward the house. Harris squared his shoulders, puffing out his chest like a man who had already decided to lie his way through the next 5 minutes. Darius stayed silent. He wanted the silence to burn. The lead agent, a tall black woman with silver braids tucked neatly behind her shoulders, stopped 10 feet away. "Sergeant Harris?" she asked. "Yes," he replied stiffly. "I am Special Agent Evelyn Grant, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We received a live signal from this address indicating interference with a federal operative." The words landed like a verdict. Every eye in the crowd turned toward Darius. Harris's mouth opened, then closed again. "That is impossible. We were responding to a call about a suspicious person." Grant's expression did not change. "That person is Agent Darius Cole, Internal Affairs Division, the man you are pointing a taser at." The crowd gasped in unison. Phones trembled as hands tried to focus. Tyler's live stream count jumped past 50,000 viewers. Harris stammered, "He never identified himself." Grant raised an eyebrow. "Did you ask?" The younger officers froze. Ruiz finally stepped forward, voice shaking. "Ma'am, I saw his plate in the system. It came up federal. The sergeant told us to ignore it." Grant's tone turned colder. "Did he now?" Darius exhaled once, finally moving. He adjusted his jacket, the glint of his badge catching sunlight. "You wanted proof, Sergeant. Here it is." He handed the badge to Agent Grant, who nodded without question. Harris tried to recover, his tone wobbling between defense and denial. "We were just doing our job." No," Darius said softly. "You were doing your habit." The crowd went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Agent Grant turned toward Ruiz and Blake. "You two, stand down. You are relieved of field duty until further notice." She faced Harris last. "And you, Sergeant, are to place your weapon on the ground." Harris's voice shook with anger. "You cannot order me to do that." "I can," Grant replied, "and I just did." He hesitated, then slowly set the taser down on the pavement. It landed with a dull thud that sounded heavier than it should have. Tyler whispered into his phone, "Oh my God, he is actually doing it." Darius looked at the boy, met his gaze, and gave a single nod. "Keep recording," he said quietly. "Let the world see what truth looks like." The comment section erupted. He said, "Keep recording. That is power without shouting. I cannot believe this is real." Grant turned to Darius. "Sir, we have your signal. Internal Affairs has eyes on the feed. Command wants this preserved for evidence." "It already is," Darius replied. Behind them, the other black SUVs pulled up, engines low and deliberate. More agents stepped out, forming a calm perimeter. They were not there to arrest anyone, only to witness. For the first time, Harris's voice broke completely. "This is ridiculous. He set us up." Darius's tone was quiet, nearly tender. "No, Sergeant. I gave you a chance to see yourself. You just refused to look." He turned to the crowd, to the phones still raised, to the witnesses who had become part of history without meaning to. "Record this too," he said, "because this is not just about me. This is about what happens when power forgets its purpose." And for the first time, no one argued. Not Harris, not the neighbors, not even the wind. The live stream hit 100,000 viewers. The world was now watching the same driveway that had once been silent. The story was no longer local. It was national. And Darius Cole had not even raised his voice. The street looked different now. It was no longer a quiet neighborhood lined with trimmed hedges and prideful fences. It had become a courtroom without walls. The federal SUVs stood like silent judges, engines off, headlights dim. The word FBI glinted faintly under the sun, mirrored in every phone lens. The crowd that once whispered had stopped speaking entirely. Every breath, every glance, every blink was waiting for what came next. Sergeant Harris was still frozen in place. His hand twitched by reflex toward his belt, but the weapon was gone. His voice, once sharp and commanding, had turned dry and uncertain. This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. He did not identify himself. "I followed protocol." Agent Evelyn Grant did not raise her voice. "Which protocol allows you to draw a weapon on a federal officer standing on his own property?" Harris's mouth opened, but no sound followed. Behind him, Officer Carla Ruiz stood motionless beside the cruiser. Her heart pounded so loud she could hear it in her ears. Everything she had learned in training collided with what she had just seen. The rules had never mentioned this. The textbooks did not cover what to do when justice looks like disobedience. Her mind replayed every second the license plate on the screen, the flashing federal tag, the moment she almost spoke but did not. The silence felt heavier now, like guilt had a sound. Agent Grant continued, "You ignored verification. You escalated without cause. You made a call based on assumption." Harris swallowed. "We got reports of a suspicious individual." "Suspicious because he was what?" Grant asked. "Because he was black? Because he looked confident? Because he did not flinch when you yelled?" The question cut through the air like glass. No one dared move. Blake stared at the ground. Ruiz closed her eyes. Grant turned toward Darius, voice steady but carrying weight. "Agent Cole, you will need to give a full statement once this scene is secure. Do you wish to press charges?" Darius looked at Harris. The man's face had gone pale, the skin around his eyes tight with panic. He had lost the power he thought he owned. Darius spoke slowly. "Not yet." That answer did not sound like mercy. It sounded like patience sharpened into steel. He turned toward the crowd, the people who had filmed him, doubted him, watched him. Their faces held an awkward mix of relief and shame. The woman who had called 911 stood near her mailbox, clutching her phone like a confession. Darius met her eyes, not with anger, but with something far more unsettling recognition. "You saw what you expected," he said softly. "Not what was there." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The boy, Tyler, was still filming, his camera steady now, his young voice low and awed. "He is not even mad," he whispered. That was when Officer Ruiz stepped forward. Her voice was small at first, trembling, unsure. "Agent Cole," she said, the title heavy on her tongue. He turned toward her. "Yes, officer. I saw your registration on my system. It came up as federal. I wanted to speak, but Sergeant Harris ordered me to stay silent." He nodded once. "And what stopped you wasn't his voice. It was fear." Ruiz blinked, fighting tears. "Yes, sir." Grant watched quietly, letting the moment unfold. She knew what was happening. This was not just exposure, it was awakening. Darius took a step closer, voice still calm but carrying farther now. "You did not make the wrong choice, officer. You just delayed the right one. Now you get to correct it." "Ugh." Ruiz drew a breath. "Sergeant Harris violated procedure," she said, louder this time. "He ignored verification. He gave unlawful commands. He endangered a federal officer." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Blake looked up, startled. Harris's head snapped toward her. "Watch your mouth, Ruiz." But she did not back down. "No, sir. Not this time." Her hand trembled, but her voice steadied. "You told me not to question command. You never said I could not question injustice." Grant smiled faintly. "You are learning faster than most." Ruiz stood taller, a visible tremor still in her shoulders, but conviction settling in. "I will give my statement to Internal Affairs." Darius nodded once. You already did. Blake looked at him confused. Sir? Darius gestured toward the briefcase. The entire exchange has been logged, recorded, and uploaded to the Bureau server. Officer Ruiz's statement just became part of the official record. Harris's face twisted. You set me up. Emmer. Darius turned his gaze toward him, cool and deliberate. I gave you every opportunity to set yourself free. The sergeant's voice rose again, desperate. You think you can destroy my career with a video? Darius answered, No, Sergeant. You did that with your choices. The silence that followed was the kind that makes people remember where they were standing, the kind that draws a line between before and after. Grant stepped closer to Harris. Your weapon and your badge, Sergeant. He hesitated, jaw trembling. Now, she repeated. With a shaking hand, he unclipped his badge and placed it on the hood of the cruiser. The small metallic clink echoed like a confession. Tyler caught the moment on camera. He whispered, This is history. His live stream chat exploded in comments. This officer just stood up for justice. She is the real one. This needs to be everywhere. Ruiz glanced toward Darius. He met her eyes again, softer now. You did the right thing, he said. The world is better for it. Tears finally slipped down her cheek, but she smiled through them. Thank you, sir. Grant turned toward the crowd. This scene is now under federal jurisdiction. Please clear the area. But no one moved, not out of defiance, but reverence. They wanted to hold on to the image for a few more seconds, the image of dignity standing taller than authority, of courage born in the middle of fear. Darius looked around, his voice quieter now, meant only for those close enough to hear. Every day, someone stands where I stood today. Most do not have cameras. Most do not have power watching. Remember them. And then he said the words that would echo far beyond that street. Silence is never neutral. It either protects truth or it protects the lie. Tyler lowered his phone, whispering to the live stream one final sentence. You heard the man. The world just changed. Ugh. The heat of the afternoon pressed against the street, thick and unrelenting. The air smelled faintly of asphalt and sweat, the scent of conflict hanging over manicured lawns and tidy mailboxes. The crowd had not dispersed, even as federal agents lined the curb. Everyone wanted to see what happened when power met accountability head-on. Agent Evelyn Grant stood like a statue beside Darius Cole, calm, centered, her badge glinting faintly in the sunlight. The two of them formed a quiet wall of authority, steady, composed, unbothered. In front of them, Sergeant Harris was unraveling. His hands shook slightly as he tried to reclaim a sense of control that was no longer his. This is not over, he said, voice breaking. You people think you can just walk in and take over my scene? Grant's eyes remained locked on him. Sergeant, this is no longer your scene. It stopped being yours the moment you violated federal protocol. Oh, the crowd murmured again. Harris's face flushed crimson. I did my job. I responded to a call. That is all. Darius's tone was quiet but carried through the tension like a low drumbeat. You did not respond to a call, Sergeant. You responded to a color. The words sliced through the air. The reaction was immediate. Some people gasped. Others whispered. A man near the fence lowered his phone slowly, realizing what the world had just heard. Harris stepped forward, fists clenched. You watch your mouth. Darius met his gaze, unflinching. I always do. That is what separates us. Blake tried to interject, voice trembling. Sergeant, please just stop talking. But Harris was too far gone. The kind of pride that grows from unchecked authority does not shrink easily. You think you are better than me, Cole? You hide behind your title, your badge, your fancy words. Out here, none of that matters. Grant tilted her head slightly. Tony si calm. Out here, Sergeant. The law still applies. You may have forgotten that. He has not. Harris turned toward the crowd, his voice rising. All of you think you know everything because you are holding a phone. You do not understand what it is like to wear this uniform. A woman shouted back from her porch. Then wear it right. Applause broke out, not loud, not chaotic, but firm. The sound of truth finally given permission to speak. Darius stepped forward once, closing the space between him and Harris until only a few feet separated them. You ask if I think I am better than you, he said. No, Sergeant, I do not. I think I remember why I took this oath. That is the difference. Harris tried to laugh, but the sound came out jagged. You think this little show makes you some kind of hero? No, Darius said softly. It makes you visible. The cameras caught everything, the shift in Harris's expression, the tightness in his jaw, the way his eyes darted from the badge on Darius's chest to the federal SUVs behind him. Blake finally stepped forward, his voice steadier now. "Sergeant, with respect, we need to cooperate. Internal Affairs is already here. They are recording. The whole world is watching this live." "Shut up, Blake," Harris snapped. But Blake did not. "No, sir. I am done being quiet." The crowd murmured again, louder this time. It was as if courage had started to multiply, moving from one person to another. Ruiz took a deep breath and joined in. "Sergeant, he is right. We are supposed to protect people, not embarrass them." Harris turned on her. "Do not lecture me on duty, rookie." "I am not," Ruiz said. "I am reminding you of it." Grant's voice cut through the chaos, crisp and final. "Enough." The single word carried command. She turned toward Harris. "You are relieved of duty, effective immediately." He froze, blinking. "You cannot do that." Darius stepped beside her. "Yes, she can. And if you doubt it, ask the agents standing behind you." Two agents from the SUVs moved forward, calm and deliberate, hands resting at their sides but ready if needed. Harris looked at them, then back at Darius, his bravado collapsing. "This is my life," he muttered. "No," Darius said. "This is your consequence." A heavy silence settled again, the kind that makes the air feel thicker, the kind that holds truth like weight. From the far end of the block, Tyler's camera was still rolling. His live stream chat filled with messages that poured across the screen like a tidal wave. He stood up for every person who ever got profiled. This man is the definition of calm power. This is how justice looks when it stops whispering. Darius looked around the crowd, his voice soft but audible enough for every microphone. "The badge is supposed to protect the innocent, not the ego. Today, it forgot which side it was on." Grant turned toward him. "You are remarkably composed, Agent Cole." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "Composure is just silence with purpose." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Washington wants a full report. We will handle the rest from here." Darius looked back at Harris one last time. "You have two options, Sergeant. Cooperate or make this harder than it needs to be." Harris glared at him, eyes burning with something between shame and rage. "You ruined me." Darius shook his head slowly. "No, Sergeant, you revealed yourself." The man's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him like water leaking from a cracked glass. The crowd stayed silent, unsure whether to cheer or cry. They had come to watch confrontation and found something heavier truth made visible. Darius took a step back, letting Grant's agents take over. He looked up briefly at the sky, squinting against the glare of the Sunday. It felt like light had finally reached this place, even if it had to fight its way in. He spoke again, quietly this time, to no one in particular. "Authority without accountability is just fear in a uniform." And as Harris was led away, head bowed and silent, the weight of that sentence lingered over the street like a final verdict. The neighborhood had just witnessed a war without bullets, a war fought with composure, truth, and a camera lens. And for the first time in a long time, the right side was winning. The afternoon had settled into that strange, heavy silence that follows chaos, the kind of quiet that does not bring peace, only realization. The entire street was frozen, watching the aftermath of power colliding with consequence. The heat shimmered off the concrete, and even the breeze seemed afraid to move. Sergeant Harris stood in the center of it all, pale and trembling, his weapon holstered, his badge lying on the hood of the police cruiser like a piece of discarded metal. His chest rose and fell in shallow bursts. The red mark of the taser strap cut across his wrist where his own grip had tightened earlier. He had been the loudest voice in the neighborhood only minutes ago. Now, he was a man listening to the sound of his own downfall. Agent Evelyn Grant spoke quietly to the agents beside her, her tone clipped but calm. "Collect the weapons and body cameras. Every recording from the moment of arrival is evidence." The agents nodded and began moving methodically, their professionalism a stark contrast to the chaos that had filled the same space moments earlier. Darius Cole stood a few feet away, silent, composed, and still unreadable. His eyes moved slowly over the faces of the crowd, the neighbors who had doubted him, the officers who had failed him, the boy who had filmed him. He carried no anger in his expression, only an exhaustion too deep to name. Tyler was still recording, though his hands trembled slightly now. The chat on his phone scrolled faster than he could read. This is unbelievable. He did nothing wrong. They almost destroyed a man's life because of skin color. I cannot stop watching. Every camera caught the same image, a black man standing tall, surrounded by those who had once accused him, but not shouting, not violent, not broken, just standing with truth as his only weapon. Darius finally broke the silence. "Sergeant Harris," he said evenly, "look around you." Harris's eyes darted across the scene, the federal agents, the neighbors, the blinking phones. "What do you want from me?" he asked hoarsely. "Nothing," Darius replied. "What I want, you cannot give. What I wanted was to be left alone in my own home." Harris swallowed hard. "You are twisting this. You provoked me." Darius stepped forward, his shadow cutting across the sunlit pavement. "You provoked yourself, Sergeant. You saw me, and you decided I did not belong. That was your first mistake. The second was thinking that belief made you right." The crowd murmured, their voices rising like wind through dry leaves. One of the older men on the sidewalk whispered, "He is telling the truth." You could see it the whole time. Harris's shoulders slumped, but his voice grew louder again, desperation leaking through the cracks. "You think you are better because you have that badge? You think that makes you untouchable?" Darius's tone was quiet, but the weight of it filled the air. "That badge does not make me better. It makes me responsible. Something you stopped being the moment you let pride lead your hand." Grant stepped closer, her voice low and controlled. "Sergeant Harris, you are under review for misconduct, intimidation, and violation of federal protocol. You will be escorted to your precinct for questioning." The words made his jaw clench. He opened his mouth, but Darius spoke first. "Before you go," he said, "there is something I want you to understand." Harris turned, his eyes hollow. "What?" Darius pointed to the briefcase on the ground. The small blue light blinked once, steady, patient. "That light means that everything here, every word, every action, every threat has already been uploaded. There is no version of this story that you can rewrite." Harris stared at the briefcase like it was a living thing, some machine built to judge him. His voice cracked. "You planned this?" Darius shook his head slowly. "No, you did." A hush fell over the crowd again. The truth was too simple, too devastating. Blake, standing a few feet behind Harris, spoke softly. "Sarge, it is over. Just stop." But Harris was not listening. His pride fought with reality, and pride never loses quietly. He turned suddenly, shouting toward the crowd, "You all think he is some kind of hero? He is not. He is just another—" He stopped mid-sentence. Every phone in the crowd had turned toward him. Dozens of lenses aimed directly at his face. The sentence he had almost finished hovered like a ghost in the air, unfinished but fully understood. Darius's voice came next, low and unshakable. "Finish it." The silence that followed was unbearable. Harris's lips trembled, but no sound came. He looked around, realizing that no one, no officer, no neighbor, not even Blake was on his side anymore. Grant broke the silence. "That is enough. Sergeant, you will come with us." Two federal agents stepped forward. They did not touch him, but their presence alone made him move. He walked stiffly toward the SUV, head bowed, the weight of his choices pressing down with every step. Darius watched him go, not with triumph, but with the quiet fatigue of a man who had seen this pattern too many times before. He turned to Agent Grant. "Thank you for responding." Grant nodded. "Internal Affairs has already opened a case file. The footage you initiated will be cataloged as evidence." Darius gave a small nod. "Good. Let it speak." As Harris disappeared into the back of the SUV, the first sound of applause rippled through the crowd, soft at first, hesitant, then building. It was not the sound of celebration. It was the sound of acknowledgement, the sound of people realizing what they had just witnessed. Tyler lowered his phone, whispering to himself. He did not even raise his voice. Ruiz wiped her eyes quietly. He did not have to. Darius turned, looking once more at the house behind him. His home, his sanctuary, the place that had almost become a headline for the wrong reason. He said quietly, almost to himself, "They saw a trespasser." They forgot to ask what he built. The wind picked up again, carrying the last of the tension away. The briefcase light blinked one final time, then went dark. The line had been crossed, and for the first time, the system had to face it. The street that had been an arena of chaos only minutes ago now felt eerily calm. The heat of the day had softened, the sun slipping lower behind the line of maple trees that guarded the cul-de-sac. The flashing lights had gone still, replaced by the quiet hum of engines idling and the occasional rustle of wind brushing against window shutters. It was as if the entire neighborhood had paused to breathe for the first time in an hour. Darius Cole stood exactly where he had been since it began, his briefcase beside him, his gaze fixed not on the agents, not on the crowd, but on the pavement beneath his feet. His shadow stretched long across the driveway, his own home, and for a moment he simply listened to the silence he had fought for. The air no longer vibrated with accusation or panic. It was steady, cool, heavy with reflection. Agent Evelyn Grant spoke softly into her radio, issuing commands in a tone so composed it felt surgical. The agents collected statements, secured evidence, and began coordinating the slow withdrawal of the Bureau's vehicles. The neighborhood had seen enough. The story would now travel on screens and broadcasts, far beyond the reach of the people who had started it. Harris was gone. His cruiser sat empty, his badge sealed in an evidence bag. The echo of his shouting still seemed to hang faintly in the air, a ghost of arrogance that had burned itself out, but Darius did not linger on him. The man was no longer the focus. The silence was. Tyler Briggs, the boy who had filmed everything, stepped closer now, still holding his phone though the live stream had ended. He looked uncertain, his earlier confidence replaced with a quiet awe. "Sir," he said, voice low, "you really did not have to do anything. You just stood there." Darius looked at him for a moment, then said, "Sometimes the hardest thing is not to move, especially when the world expects you to." Tyler nodded slowly, trying to absorb the weight of it. "I did not know that was power." Darius replied, "It is not power, Tyler. It is control. Power is loud. Control is silent." The boy lowered his phone, realizing the difference. Across the street, the woman who had called 911 still stood on her porch, arms folded, face pale. She had not left or spoken since the truth was revealed. Her husband reached out, touched her shoulder, but she did not move. She was staring at Darius like a person seeing something too late to undo. He looked up, met her eyes for a brief moment, and then turned away. Forgiveness was not part of this story. Understanding would have to be enough. Ruiz approached next, hesitant but sincere. "Agent Cole," she said, "I wanted to say thank you for not pressing charges immediately." Darius gave her a small nod. "You were afraid. I know that fear. But courage is not the absence of fear, Officer Ruiz. It is deciding that truth matters more." Her throat tightened. "I almost stayed quiet." But you did not," he said. "That is what people will remember." She smiled faintly, eyes glassy, then stepped back to let him have space. Agent Grant walked over, her expression softer now that the adrenaline had faded. "Internal Affairs has confirmed the transfer of your footage. It is already under review in Washington. They are calling this case Incident 1740. Darius raised an eyebrow. "Sounds clinical." "That is how they sanitize reality," she replied. "Numbers are easier to process than shame." He allowed himself a tired smile. "That is why I record it with faces." Grant studied him for a long moment. "You handled yourself better than most would have." "I have had practice," he said. She nodded, understanding what he meant without needing to ask. Years of living under suspicion had trained him in ways the Academy never could. The agents began packing up the evidence markers, folding away tape and labels. The crowd started to thin. A few neighbors approached the edge of their lawns, embarrassed but curious, offering awkward nods that did not quite reach apology. Darius did not acknowledge them. He was not cruel, but this was not their redemption to claim. The streetlights flickered on as the last of the daylight faded. A soft golden hue spread over the driveways, blending with the flashing reflections from the departing SUVs. The scene that had once looked like confrontation now looked like closure. Grant turned back one last time. "You will hear from headquarters tomorrow. Expect interviews, press inquiries, maybe even political noise." Darius exhaled. "Noise is fine. Silence is worse." When the final Bureau vehicle rolled away, the neighborhood was left with nothing but the sound of sprinklers and the faint hum of crickets returning to their nightly rhythm. The world beyond that street had already changed, though the people standing there did not fully understand how. Darius finally picked up his briefcase, turned toward his front door, and walked up the steps slowly, deliberately. Every step sounded like punctuation at the end of a sentence that had taken far too long to write. He stopped at the door, hand resting on the brass handle, and looked back one last time. Tyler was still watching, Phone lowered now, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. Darius nodded once to him, a gesture of quiet acknowledgement, then spoke just loud enough for the boy to hear. "Do not let silence fool you," he said. "It can either be a weapon or a wound. You decide which one it becomes." Then he opened the door and stepped inside. The moment he did, the street seemed to exhale a long, collective breath released into the cooling air. Inside the house, the light from the setting sun painted the walls in shades of gold and crimson. The hum of his surveillance system clicked off automatically, the blue indicator fading into black. For the first time that day, Darius was alone. He set his briefcase on the table, removed his jacket, and loosened his tie. His reflection in the hallway mirror looked calm, but the weight of everything sat behind his eyes. He did not smile. He did not sigh. He simply stood there, staring at himself the way he had stared at the officers, silent, searching, resolute. Outside, the neighborhood began to return to its usual rhythm. But something intangible lingered in the air, an invisible shift that could not be undone. For once, the silence did not feel empty. It felt earned. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock. The chaos outside had drained away, leaving behind an echo that lived in the walls. Darius Cole walked through his home like a man returning to a battlefield after the smoke had cleared. Every sound, the click of his shoes against the hardwood, the creak of the stair carried a weight he could not shake. He set the briefcase on the kitchen counter and watched the small blue light blink twice before fading to black. The recording had stopped. The evidence had already traveled halfway across the country by now, landing in the secure servers of the Bureau's headquarters. His work, in a sense, was done, but peace did not come. Not yet. The evening light bled through the blinds in thin golden stripes. Outside, he could still see the faint traces of tire marks on the asphalt where the federal SUVs had parked. A few neighbors' curtains shifted, but no one came out. No one ever does after the truth reveals itself. People prefer spectacle, not aftermath. Darius poured himself a glass of water, stared at it for a long moment, then placed it down untouched. The phone on the counter buzzed. "Unknown number," encrypted line. He picked it up. "Cole," he said quietly. A familiar voice answered, calm and steady. "Director Langston here. I saw the feed." Darius did not respond right away. He had known the director for 15 years, through cases that never made headlines and scandals that nearly did. Langston was not a man who wasted words. "That video has gone viral," the director continued. "Half the country is watching it. Internal Affairs confirmed every timestamp. You handled yourself with precision." "That is what training is for," Darius replied. Langston sighed. "Training is one thing. Composure under that kind of pressure is another. You understand the weight of this, don't you?" "I do," Darius said. "I also understand what happens if we let it pass like another headline." The director's voice grew quieter. "Washington will want a statement. They will want you to stand before the press. Say something measured, something that soothes. The Bureau cannot afford another storm." Darius leaned against the counter, eyes narrowing. "So, they want silence dressed as civility?" Langston hesitated. "They want control." Darius's tone sharpened. "Control is not peace, Director. You and I both know that." For a long moment, the line was silent except for the faint buzz of distance. Then the director said, "You could have de-escalated differently." Darius's laugh was dry. "By kneeling? That is not what I meant." "I know," Darius said. "But that is what they mean when they say it." Langston exhaled slowly. "You realize you just exposed an entire department to national scrutiny. The mayor's office is already calling. The city chief has been placed on leave. You did not just embarrass a precinct, Cole, you cracked the foundation." "Then maybe the foundation was hollow," Darius said softly. The director's voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "There are people who will come after you for this. Not just angry officers, political forces, unions, lobbyists. They will not forgive what you did today." "I do not need their forgiveness," Darius said. "I need accountability." Langston paused again, then said the words that mattered most. "Do you want me to activate Protocol 6? Darius looked at the briefcase, the one now silent and dark. Protocol 6 was an internal mechanism, an investigative override that opened every file, every report, every communication connected to a specific incident. It was the Bureau's version of pulling the fire alarm. It did not just expose corruption, it detonated it. He had used it only once before, years ago, when an entire field office had been caught falsifying warrants. That case had nearly ended his career. Darius stared at the glass of water again, untouched, its surface still. "Activate Protocol 6, he said finally. There was no hesitation on the other end. "Understood. Consider it done." A faint tone chimed through the briefcase, 3 slow beeps, confirmation of activation. A red light replaced the blue one. The system was awake again. Langston's voice grew firm. "You just started something we cannot stop, Cole." "Good," Darius said. "It is time someone did." When the call ended, he placed the phone down and looked at the reflection in the kitchen window. Outside, the sky had turned the color of ash and copper. The lights from distant traffic flickered faintly, like a city breathing under its own weight. He thought about Harris, about the way his voice cracked when the truth cornered him, about Ruiz, standing in defiance even as her hands trembled, about the crowd who watched and recorded but never intervened. He thought about Tyler, the boy who had captured the world's attention with a phone and a sense of justice. For years, Darius had believed in the quiet power of systems, that if one built enough evidence, truth would eventually win. But today, standing in his own kitchen, he was no longer sure that truth could survive without fire. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the small bureau badge he had shown the world earlier. The gold surface caught the last light of dusk. He turned it over in his hand, reading the inscription he had long memorized. Fidelity, bravery, integrity. He whispered the words aloud. Integrity does not mean silence. His phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message flashed across the screen. It was from a contact he knew only by code name, Oracle. The message contained a single line. Washington confirmed Protocol 6. Expect exposure within 72 hours. Darius stared at the screen, then typed one sentence in reply. Then let the truth breathe. He put the phone down and finally took a sip of the water that had gone warm. It tasted metallic, bitter, but he finished it anyway. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one, like witnesses taking their posts. Somewhere beyond the horizon, computers were already pulling data, tracing emails, unlocking files. Names would appear, dates would match. The system that had failed him would now answer to him. He walked to the window, looking out at the driveway where everything had begun. The faint scent of asphalt and tension still lingered in the air. The world was watching now, and he knew that silence would never again be his ally. The stillness of the house felt different now. It was no longer the silence of peace. It was the silence before the storm. By dawn, the story had already crossed every state line. What had begun as one live video from a quiet suburban street was now an unstoppable current running through the veins of America. News anchors spoke in careful tones, politicians rehearsed statements, and social media burned with outrage and awe in equal measure. The headlines rolled across every screen. FBI agent detained by local police on his own property. Racial profiling in uniform. National debate rekindled. The calm that broke the system. Who is Agent Darius Cole? Some called him a hero, others called him a threat, but everyone was talking. In a cafe in Atlanta, an elderly black man scrolled through his phone, tears welling in his eyes. They finally caught one on camera who didn't scream, didn't fight, just stood, he said softly. The woman beside him nodded. He made them see themselves. In a newsroom in Washington, producers scrambled to verify every frame of the footage. Get his record, his case files, his clearance level. I want to know everything about this man, one shouted. But every request they sent to the Bureau came back with the same reply. Classified. Inside the Federal Bureau of Investigation's headquarters, the atmosphere was far from calm. A dozen agents crowded around a large conference screen, showing the live feed from News Network. Darius Cole's face, calm and unshaken, filled the monitors. Director Langston stood at the head of the room, jaw tight. A senior analyst broke the silence. Protocol 6 is active. The system's digging through police records, case files, dispatch logs, everything tied to that department. Langston nodded. And what have we found so far? Enough to make headlines for the next year. False reports, fabricated stops, body camera tampering. It goes deeper than we thought. Another agent added. The mayor's office just issued a statement. They're demanding a full federal review. Langston exhaled slowly. Then that is exactly what they are going to get. He turned to the screen showing Darius's live recording from the night before. The image of the sergeant's face caught mid-denial, cornered by truth, froze in the still frame. Langston spoke quietly, almost to himself. He gave us the evidence they would never have released, but now the question is, who will protect him from the fallout? Because fallout was coming. It always did. By midday, the story had become a storm. Major networks replayed the footage every hour. Talk shows invited retired officers and civil rights attorneys to argue over what it all meant. One side called it a wake-up call. The other called it a betrayal of the badge. Outside Darius's home, news vans began to appear like vultures circling a wound. The once quiet neighborhood now pulsed with microphones, cameras, and satellite trucks. Reporters knocked on doors, asking neighbors how it felt to live next to history. Most refused to speak. Some said they had always known Darius was someone important. Others lied and said they had supported him from the start. Darius watched it all from his living room window, curtains half drawn. He had turned on the television only once that morning, long enough to see his own face on every channel. Then he shut it off. The noise was too much. The truth had already left his hands, and the world was shaping it into something else. His phone vibrated again. Another encrypted call. "Cole," he answered. Langston's voice came through, calm but edged with fatigue. "We have identified multiple leaks from local law enforcement. Someone's trying to smear you." Darius' eyes narrowed. "How?" "They are releasing old case files details from your undercover work. Nothing criminal, but they are twisting context. They are painting you as unstable, volatile. The narrative is shifting fast." "I expected that," Darius said. "When the truth hurts, they attack the witness." Langston sighed. "The Bureau is issuing a statement of support, but you know how the media cycle works. They will run whatever bleeds." "I do not care about them," Darius said. "I care about the system pretending this was a misunderstanding." Langston paused. "You may not like what I am about to tell you. Washington wants to limit your visibility. They are asking you to take leave until the investigation finishes." Darius let out a quiet laugh, no humor in it. "They want to silence me. They want to contain the damage. Then maybe it is time the damage spread." "Cole," Langston warned, "you are walking a fine line." "I have been walking that line my whole life," Darius said. When the call ended, he sat down at his dining table, opened his laptop, and logged into the Bureau's encrypted network. The screen displayed a flood of incoming data, thousands of documents being pulled by Protocol 6. His system had already cross-referenced hundreds of cases, showing patterns of racial bias, unlawful detentions, and falsified reports. It was larger than one sergeant. It was systemic rot. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a brief moment, he hesitated. If he went further, there would be no way back. This was not just about justice anymore. It was exposure, massive, irreversible exposure. Then he typed a single command. "Compile full record. Release to Internal Affairs and Oversight Committee." A progress bar appeared. Transmitting 40%, 50%, 60%. Outside, a car slowed in front of his house. The sound of a door closing broke the stillness. Darius looked up. Through the window, he saw a group of reporters gathering again, microphones ready. They were not leaving anytime soon. He ignored them. He had other wars to fight. The upload finished. The system confirmed transmission. The files were gone, copied, archived, and sent to the highest levels of government. There would be no burying them now. Darius leaned back, exhaling deeply. He knew what would follow: hearings, denials, threats, maybe even attempts to discredit him. But the truth was alive now, and once truth breathes, it does not suffocate easily. Across the city, television screens flashed his name again. Protesters had begun to gather downtown, holding signs that read, "Silence is complicity," and "Justice wears no color." Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang a reminder that even the smallest sound can start a revolution. Darius looked out the window once more, the faint reflection of his own face overlapping with the movement outside. The world had changed overnight, and he knew it was only the beginning. By nightfall, the street outside Darius Cole's home glowed with the harsh light of cameras. The once quiet cul-de-sac had transformed into a media battlefield. News vans lined the sidewalks like armored vehicles, reporters jostling for position, shouting questions over one another. The hum of generators mixed with the clatter of camera shutters and the low buzz of tension that never seemed to end. Inside the house, the glow from television screens flickered across the walls. playing endless loops of the same footage, the confrontation, the badge reveal, the arrest. Darius had turned the volume low, but even without sound, the story screamed from every angle. Every gesture, every pause, every breath of that day was now public property. He sat at the edge of the dining table, laptop open, eyes scanning a flood of messages. Some were from colleagues offering quiet respect. Others were from people he had never met, thanking him for standing firm. But there were darker messages, too. Anonymous threats, accusations, venom disguised as patriotism. A soft knock broke the tension. It came from the side door, the one that led to the small garden behind his house. Darius rose slowly and opened it. Officer Carla Ruiz stood there, still in uniform, the lines under her eyes deeper than before. She looked exhausted, but determined. "Agent Cole," she said quietly. "I did not know where else to go." "Come in," Darius said. She stepped inside, glancing nervously toward the front windows where flashes of cameras lit the night. "They have been outside all day," she said. "Some of them followed me after my shift. I think they know who I am now." Darius closed the door behind her. "Sit down," he said. "You did the right thing, Officer Ruiz. That does not make it easy." She took a seat, hands clasped tightly. "Internal Affairs called me this morning. They said my statement matched your report. They also said the department is furious. They called me a traitor." Darius nodded slowly. "Truth always sounds like betrayal to those who live in denial." Her voice cracked. "I have family in law enforcement. They stopped answering my calls." He studied her for a moment, then spoke softly. "Courage will cost you comfort, but it will also buy you peace." Ruiz wiped her eyes and tried to steady her breathing. "They told me you activated some kind of protocol?" "Protocol 6, Darius said. "It forces the Bureau to audit every file connected to the incident. That means every report, every disciplinary record, every complaint buried under bureaucracy." Her brow furrowed. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," Darius replied. "But silence is worse." A knock came again, this time from the front door, louder, impatient. Darius stood still for a second, then walked to the entryway and peered through the small glass pane. It was Agent Evelyn Grant. When he opened the door, she stepped inside briskly, her coat still damp from the night rain. "We need to talk," she said. Darius gestured toward Ruiz. "You already know Officer Ruiz." Grant nodded. Yes, she was the only person on that scene who remembered her oath. Ruiz looked down, embarrassed. "It does not feel like that." "It will," Grant said. "Eventually." Grant turned back to Darius. "Washington is in chaos. The data you uploaded is circulating faster than anyone predicted. Congress is demanding a briefing. The Attorney General wants a meeting tomorrow. They are calling this Operation Reflection." Darius raised an eyebrow. "A poetic name for a political mess." Grant's voice lowered. "You should know that your name is everywhere. The Bureau is being praised and condemned at the same time. Some are calling you the conscience of the Bureau. Others are calling you a liability." Darius gave a faint, tired smile. "They used to call me both those things before lunch." Grant did not smile back. "I am serious, Darius. The threats are escalating. We intercepted chatter from extremist forums calling you a traitor. They are sharing your address. You need protection." He shook his head. "If I accept protection, they will spin it as weakness. If I refuse, they will call it arrogance. Either way, the story grows." Ruiz looked alarmed. "Sir, they could come here." "They already have," Darius said, glancing toward the reporters outside. "The difference is, those cameras cannot shoot bullets." Grant's expression tightened. "I am assigning a team to watch the house. You can refuse publicly if you want, but they will be here regardless." Darius sighed. "Do what you must. I am not running." Grant studied him for a moment, then softened. "I know you are not, but you need to understand something. What you did is bigger than one precinct. It is going to expose a network of misconduct across multiple states. You may have lit a match you cannot control." Darius looked at her evenly. "Control is how corruption survives. Sometimes the only way to cure infection is to let the fever burn." Grant nodded slowly. "Just be ready for the heat." As she left, Ruiz stood and looked at Darius, her voice almost a whisper. "Do you ever get tired of being right?" He looked at her, eyes distant. "It is not about being right, officer. It is about refusing to be silent." When the door closed behind them, Darius walked back to the dining table. His laptop was still open, the glow from the screen illuminating a single line of text. Protocol 6. Active investigation. 4,270. One case is connected. He stared at the number, knowing what it meant. Thousands of stories. Thousands of lives. Each one a shadow of his own. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, drumming against the windows like fingers on glass. The reporters huddled under umbrellas, their cameras still aimed at his front door. The world wanted a statement, a soundbite, a symbol. But Darius Cole had no interest in being a symbol. He closed the laptop, leaned back in his chair, and whispered to the empty room, "The truth does not need my permission to spread." The lights flickered as thunder rolled overhead. For a moment, everything went dark. Then the power returned, and the briefcase on the counter blinked once again, its red light glowing steady in the dark. The storm had begun, and this time, no one could stop it. The rain fell in heavy, rhythmic sheets against the windows, washing away the remnants of the day before. It was past midnight, and the city outside pulsed faintly with the glow of streetlights reflected in puddles. Inside the house, Darius Cole sat in the dim light of his study, a half-empty cup of black coffee cooling beside his laptop. The storm outside mirrored the one that had begun inside the bureau and inside him. The glow from the computer screen revealed the endless stream of incoming data from Protocol 6. Thousands of reports were unfolding like ghosts escaping from sealed graves. Each document told a story of silence and abuse, unlawful stops, falsified testimonies, patterns of racial targeting buried beneath the weight of bureaucracy. Darius read them one by one, his jaw tightening with every revelation. The truth was no longer a single case. It was an avalanche. A faint vibration broke the silence. His secure phone buzzed against the table, the screen flashing an encrypted line of numbers. Darius picked it up. "Cole," he said softly. A familiar voice came through Director Langston again, but this time, the composure in his tone was gone. "They are losing control," Langston said. "The data you released hit the Oversight Committee tonight. Half the Bureau is in crisis mode. The Department of Justice has ordered an emergency session." Darius leaned back, his voice low. "Then it is working." Langston hesitated. "You do not understand. There are senators calling this an attack on law enforcement. They are claiming you went rogue, that you activated the protocol without authorization." "I did," Darius said plainly, "because authorization was the problem." The director sighed heavily. "You just declared war on a system that feeds itself. Do you know what that means for you?" "I do," Darius replied. "It means I am finally doing my job." Langston's voice softened, almost pleading. "Listen to me. They are not just coming for your reputation. They are coming for your life. You exposed people who have spent decades burying what you just dug up. They will not let you stand in front of a camera again." Darius's eyes flicked toward the rain-spattered window. "They can try." "Cole, I am serious." "So am I." There was silence for a moment, the kind that carried understanding between two men who had both seen too much of the world's hidden machinery. Then Langston said quietly, "You always wanted to believe that justice could live inside the system, but once you shine light inside it, the system fights back." Darius's voice was steady. "Let it fight. I will not lose sleep for telling the truth." The line went dead. He placed the phone down, his reflection flickering faintly on the laptop screen. For the first time, a trace of fatigue crossed his face. The kind of fatigue that does not come from fear, but from carrying a truth too heavy for one man. A sudden crash of thunder shook the windows. The lights flickered, then steadied. Darius turned toward the hallway when a knock echoed from the front door, slow, deliberate, heavy. He checked the clock. 2:23 in the morning. Another knock. 3 times this time. He reached into the drawer beside his desk and removed a small black firearm. He did not point it, just held it, as one holds certainty. He moved quietly toward the door. "Who is it?" he called out. No answer. Only rain. He waited, listening. Then came the sound of tires rolling slowly over wet pavement outside. He pulled the curtain aside slightly. Through the veil of rain, he saw a dark sedan idling at the curb, no license plate visible. 2 figures sat inside. The car lights flashed once, then went dark. He stood there for several seconds, unmoving, reading the message behind the silence. They were not the press. They were not the bureau. They were watching. He locked the door, double-checked every window, then returned to the study. The briefcase on the counter blinked red again, a signal that it had detected proximity movement. Darius exhaled through his nose. calm but alert. He typed a quick command into the bureau system, triggering an automatic backup of all files to 3 independent locations. Then he encrypted his home network, his fingers moving with practiced precision. If something was coming, he wanted the truth to outlive him. The storm intensified, rain hammering the glass like a warning. Somewhere outside, a branch snapped under the wind. Then his phone buzzed again this time. A message. No sender. Just 6 words. You should have stayed silent, Cole. He stared at the screen for a moment, unmoved. Then he typed a reply. That is why you lost. He set the phone down and rose to his feet, walking to the window again. The sedan was still there, engine humming low. He could feel the weight of their eyes through the storm. But Darius Cole did not flinch. He whispered to the glass, his voice steady. You can threaten a man. You cannot threaten what he has already exposed. The lights in the sedan flickered once more. Then the car began to move. It rolled away slowly, tires hissing against the wet asphalt, disappearing into the rain. Darius stood there for a long while, the echo of thunder fading behind him. Then he turned back to his desk, opened his laptop again, and continued reading the reports. Every file was a confession, every number was a scar. He did not sleep. He did not need to. The world outside was finally waking up, and he knew dawn would not bring peace, only revelation. By the time the first light crept through the blinds, the storm had passed, but the air still carried that scent of something electric, something irreversible. The headlines waiting for the morning would not just be about a police mistake anymore. They would be about the machine itself. And in that quiet moment, Darius Cole finally allowed himself a small, weary smile. Because for the first time in years, he was not fighting for approval. He was fighting for truth. And truth, once freed, never hides again. The sun rose pale and thin over Washington, D.C., cutting through the morning haze like light through smoke. The Capitol building stood gleaming and silent, but the silence outside was deceptive. Inside, the air was charged. Every seat in the committee chamber was filled politicians, journalists, agents, and citizens packed shoulder to shoulder. The words, Public Oversight Hearing, Protocol 6, glowed across the large digital screen at the front of the room. At the center of it all sat Darius Cole. No uniform today, no badge, no weapon, just a dark suit, a clean white shirt, and the quiet authority of a man who had already been through fire and learned how to stand in the smoke. The room buzzed with low murmurs until the gavel struck wood. The chairwoman of the Oversight Committee, Senator Miriam O'Connor, leaned into her microphone. This hearing is now in session, she said. Her voice was firm but even. We are here to discuss the activation of Protocol 6 and the subsequent exposure of systemic misconduct across multiple law enforcement agencies. She looked directly at Darius. Agent Cole, you may begin your statement. He rose slowly, buttoned his jacket, and faced the senators. Cameras clicked like insects in the silence. For a moment, he just stood there still, deliberate, commanding the room without a word. Then he spoke. Senators, he began, his tone calm, unhurried, steady. I did not activate Protocol 6 to create chaos. I activated it because silence had become policy. The words hung in the air. The room shifted, journalists leaning forward, pens scratching. For years, Darius continued, the Bureau received complaints of misconduct, racial bias, and falsified reports across local and federal law enforcement. These complaints were filed, reviewed, and then quietly buried under the weight of internal politics. I followed the rules. I wrote the reports. I used the proper channels. And every time, those reports disappeared. Senator Caldwell, a tall man with a practiced smile, interrupted. Agent Cole, are you suggesting that the Bureau itself was complicit in covering up these issues? Darius met his eyes. I am not suggesting it, Senator. I am stating it. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. Darius continued. When you silence truth long enough, it learns to find another way to speak. On the day I was detained outside my own home, the system spoke for me. Every assumption that justified that stop, every bias that turned my driveway into a crime scene, is written into those reports you are holding now. Senator O'Connor leaned forward, her expression unreadable. And you believe this exposure was necessary? I believe it was inevitable, Darius said. Because when justice becomes selective, it stops being justice. The silence that followed was different now, heavier, closer, almost reverent. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate before clicking again. Caldwell cleared his throat. You understand the damage this has caused. There are protests across multiple cities, law enforcement morale is collapsing, and public trust is eroding. Darius nodded once. Truth always damages illusion before it heals reality. Senator O'Connor raised a brow. That is poetic, Agent Cole. But do you understand the cost? You have made powerful enemies. I understand, he said. But I also understand the cost of pretending that comfort is peace. From the back of the room, a voice called out one of the journalists. Agent Cole, do you regret it? He turned slightly, his voice softer now. No, because for the first time, people saw what silence looks like when it wears a uniform. The gallery broke into quiet applause before the chairwoman restored order with the gavel. Agent Cole, O'Connor said. The committee has reviewed the data. Over 4,000 cases tied to misconduct, spanning 15 states. What happens next depends on what you tell us now. What is your recommendation? Darius took a slow breath, his gaze sweeping across the room. Accountability, he said. Real accountability. Not committees, not press statements, not symbolic firings. We need structural reform, independent oversight, mandatory transparency, body camera access without departmental control. We need laws that protect truth instead of punishing it. Caldwell leaned forward again. And you believe the Bureau will cooperate? Darius's eyes narrowed. If it does not, then it is no longer a Bureau of investigation. It is a Bureau of preservation. The senators exchanged glances. Grant, sitting quietly behind Darius, allowed herself a faint smile. She knew that tone. It was not arrogance. It was precision. O'Connor spoke again. One final question, Agent Cole. Why did you choose to make your stand that day? You could have identified yourself. You could have avoided the entire confrontation. Darius's answer came without hesitation. Because if I had flashed my badge, I would have confirmed their belief that only power deserves respect. I wanted them to see a man, not a title, not a rank, just a man. And they failed that test. Oh. A quiet gasp moved through the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then O'Connor nodded slowly. Thank you, Agent Cole. The committee will review your testimony and recommendations. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck again. The room erupted, reporters shouting, flashes exploding, voices colliding in a storm of noise. Darius remained still for a few seconds, breathing evenly, before turning toward the exit. As he stepped into the corridor, Agent Evelyn Grant joined him. You just shook the foundation of Washington, she said. Darius adjusted his jacket. Foundations are meant to be tested. Do you think they will listen? She asked. He gave a faint smile. They have no choice. The world is already listening for them. Outside the Capitol, hundreds of people had gathered, protesters, supporters, activists, families. They held signs that read, "Accountability is justice," and "Truth needs no permission." Oh, when Darius stepped into the open, the crowd went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause, not the wild kind that celebrates victory, but the deep, grounded kind that recognizes courage. He did not wave. He did not speak. He simply stood there beneath the morning sun, letting the sound wash over him like a tide. In that moment, he understood something profound. The system had built its power on silence, but silence was no longer its ally. And as the cameras captured the man who had turned quiet defiance into national reckoning, the storm that had started on one driveway had now become a movement. The world had finally heard him, and it was not going to forget. The applause outside the Capitol still echoed in Darius Cole's ears long after the crowd dispersed. But by the time the sun set over Washington that evening, the mood of the country had already shifted. What had begun as celebration was turning into confrontation. Across the nation, every news channel dissected his words, twisting them, framing them, dissecting them again. Commentators argued about intent. Politicians argued about blame. And while millions praised his courage, others painted him as the face of insubordination. Headlines flooded every screen. Agent Cole accused of undermining law enforcement. Hero or hypocrite? The debate over the man who broke the silence. Federal whistleblower sparks national unrest. Darius watched from his apartment, the glow of the television flickering across his face. He had expected this. Truth never arrived without a price tag. But the speed of the backlash was stunning. The first death threat arrived before midnight. It came as a single line in his encrypted inbox. You will not live long enough to finish what you started. He stared at it for several seconds, unmoved, then deleted it. It was not fear he felt, it was familiarity. He had lived too long in the crosshairs of injustice to be surprised when it aimed again. By morning, the tension outside had boiled over. Protesters filled the streets, some holding his name on signs, others shouting it like a curse. Law enforcement unions called for disciplinary action. Politicians demanded hearings about bureau overreach. Agent Evelyn Grant arrived at his apartment just after dawn. Her expression was sharper than usual, her posture taut. "They are calling for your suspension," she said without preamble. Darius raised an eyebrow. "That did not take long. They are saying you violated national security protocols by exposing classified information," she continued. He let out a quiet laugh. "I exposed misconduct, not secrets." "They do not care about the difference," Grant replied. "They care about control." He nodded slowly, walking toward the window. Outside, reporters camped at the curb like scavengers waiting for a carcass. "How bad is it?" he asked. Grant crossed her arms. "The Attorney General's office has requested a full review. Certain members of Congress are calling for your resignation. Others want to make you the face of reform. You are a symbol now, Darius, depending on who is talking. Either the best or worst thing to happen to the Bureau in decades." He turned back to her. "Symbols are dangerous. They give people permission to stop thinking." She gave a small smile. "And yet you have become one." Before Darius could answer, his phone rang again. The screen flashed Director Langston. He answered on speaker. "Cole." Langston's voice was low and tense. "You need to leave the city." Darius frowned. "Explain." "An unmarked vehicle was seen near your residence last night. We traced the plates to a private security firm with political ties. We cannot confirm who sent them." "Oh, I know who sent them," Darius said calmly. "Fear always hires the same men." Langston ignored the remark. "We are arranging relocation. You will stay under Bureau protection until this dies down." Darius's voice hardened. "No, I will not vanish just because truth made the wrong people uncomfortable." "This is not about comfort," Langston said. "It is about survival." Darius paused. "I have survived worse than politics." Langston exhaled. "You are not invincible, Cole." I am not trying to be," Darius said. "I am trying to be honest." Langston's silence carried frustration and admiration in equal measure. Finally, he said, "At least let us send someone to watch the perimeter." "You already did," Darius said, glancing toward Grant. The director hesitated. "Then listen to her." The call ended. Grant studied him for a long moment. "He is right, you know. They will not let this go. You have embarrassed men with long memories and deep pockets." Darius walked toward the bookshelf and retrieved a worn leather binder. Inside were handwritten notes, reports, and testimonies he had collected over the years, stories of victims who had never been heard. He set it on the table gently. "They have tried to silence me my entire career," he said. "The difference is, this time, I am not the only one speaking." Grant's gaze softened. "The movement is growing," she admitted. "Protests in 7 major cities. Civil rights groups calling for a federal overhaul of policing oversight. But you need to understand something. Movements are unpredictable. They build momentum until they either change everything or destroy themselves." Darius met her eyes. "Then let it build. Maybe the system needs to feel the weight of what it ignored." A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Both froze. Grant's hand instinctively went to her holster. Darius walked quietly to the door, peered through the peephole, and saw a young woman holding a microphone and a cameraman behind her. He opened the door slightly. "Agent Cole," the reporter began breathlessly. "Sarah Jameson, Channel 12. The country is watching you right now. Do you have anything to say to the people who think you endangered national security?" Darius stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he said softly, "National security does not mean protecting lies." Her eyes widened. "So, you do not regret your actions?" He shook his head. "Regret is for those who doubt purpose." The camera light blinked, recording every syllable. Grant stepped forward, ending the interview. "That is enough. No more questions." She closed the door firmly and locked it. "Now you are officially the headline again," she said, exasperated. Darius walked back to the window. The city below was alive with noise, protests, sirens, voices rising and colliding like a storm made of conviction and confusion. He watched quietly, the faint reflection of the reporter's camera light still burning in his eyes. "Let them talk," he said finally. Noise means they are awake. Silence means they are comfortable again. And comfort, he added, is the enemy of truth. Grant exhaled slowly, then gave a small nod. Then I hope you are ready for what comes next. Outside, the sky over Washington turned a bruised gray, the wind thick with rain and the promise of unrest. The storm that had begun in one driveway had now reached the steps of power, and it was just beginning to roar. Director Langston sat in his office, the gray light of morning cutting through the blinds in sharp, narrow lines. Every message that flashed across his screen carried the same undertone panic. The Bureau was bleeding from the inside. Some divisions had gone silent, others refused to cooperate. The activation of Protocol 6 had unearthed more than misconduct. It had revealed betrayal. His phone buzzed again. A voice on the line whispered, "Director, internal servers show unauthorized access. Someone is deleting case files related to Agent Cole's uploads." Langston's jaw tightened. "Trace it," he ordered. "Already did. The signal is coming from inside headquarters." He stood slowly, his pulse heavy. "Then the threat is not outside," he said. "It is us." Meanwhile, across the river in his apartment, Darius Cole felt the same unease. His system alerted him to missing data fragments, files disappearing in real time. Someone was trying to erase the evidence before it reached full exposure. He dialed Grant immediately. "They are wiping the servers," he said. "I know," she answered, her voice breathless. "Langston is locking down the network, but there is movement inside the Bureau. Someone high-ranking wants this buried." "Then they are afraid," Darius said quietly. "Good. Fear means we are close." But his calm belied what he knew too well: when corruption is cornered, it stops hiding and starts hunting. Outside his apartment, a black sedan slowed at the curb again, headlights off this time. The same silent watchers. Darius stood at the window, watching them through the rain-streaked glass, and whispered to himself, "If truth has enemies inside, then the fight begins here." The war had officially turned inward. Inside Bureau headquarters, the air smelled of fear and toner. Agents moved in silence, eyes avoiding one another, as if guilt might be contagious. Director Langston stood before the operations board when the power flickered once, then twice. The main screen went black. "Sir," an analyst said urgently, "the internal firewall just dropped. Someone overrode the master key." Langston's voice was cold. "Who has clearance for that level?" The analyst hesitated. "Only 3 people, sir. You, me, and—" He stopped. Langston's phone buzzed. A single message appeared. "Do not trust her." He turned sharply toward the hall just as Agent Evelyn Grant stepped through the door, her face pale, her hands empty. "They are coming for Cole," she said. Langston's eyes narrowed. "Who is they?" "The Bureau's own tactical unit," she replied. "They have orders to detain him under national security grounds." "Detain," Langston repeated, the words sour in his mouth. "Or silence?" Grant's silence was his answer. Miles away, Darius Cole looked up from his laptop. His system detected an incoming breach, coordinates pointing directly to his location. He whispered, "So it begins." And the lights in his apartment flickered as the world outside filled with the low growl of approaching engines. The sound of engines grew louder until they surrounded the block. Darius Cole stood in the center of his darkened apartment, the briefcase pulsing with its steady red light like a heartbeat. Rain hammered against the windows as shadows moved beyond the glass-armed silhouettes advancing in silence. He did not run. He did not hide. He pressed one final command on his laptop, and a new signal pulsed through every encrypted network tied to Protocol 6. A single line of code triggered the release of every document, every video, every name. The truth was free now, impossible to erase, impossible to silence. Outside, the tactical unit breached the front door, shouting orders. Darius turned slowly, his hands raised but his eyes calm. "You are too late," he said. "It is already everywhere." Director Langston's voice came through the radio in the commander's ear. "Stand down. The world is watching." And it was. Every television, every phone, every feed lit up with the files Darius had unleashed. The agents froze, their mission collapsing under the weight of exposure. Darius lowered his hands, looked toward the storm, and whispered, "Justice does not need permission." Lightning split the sky. The truth had won.